Hello everyone. Today we're going to be looking at appropriately formatting essays and citations using the APA standards that are required of you throughout your university course. This is the fourth video in the Academic Skills series. So let's start with the basics. When you're writing an essay and you're submitting an essay electronically to the university, we expect you to use an appropriate font, such as Times New Roman. Being able to standardise the font means that all of the essays will look very similar and easy to read. Similarly, we expect you to use a font size of 12. This means that the font won't be so big that it will take many pages to get through, but also so that it won't be so small that when we're marking your work it will be difficult to read. Bear in mind that you want your marker to be on your side. The next is we hope that your work will be double line spaced. Again, this makes it easier to read. It just means that the lines of your writing are not particularly close together, so that we can more easily read it. Also, if you have a paper submission, or if your marker prefers to mark by printing out your submission and marking it with pen and paper, then this means that your marker can have space between the lines to make edit suggestions for you, and this can benefit you because you can use this feedback long term. We also expect you to indent every new paragraph. This helps us to identify where you have started a new paragraph and improves the flow of your writing. Also, if we consider that you might have issues with your paragraphing, it's easier to identify this if you indent with every new paragraph. This means that we can see if there's a potential issue and help you to correct it more easily. Last week, we discussed where you would use in-text citations. So you use in-text citations to show where something was someone else's idea, where you're referring to other research, or where you might be referring to a definition of a key term. So you direct your reader's attention to the original source of the definition or the original source of that research that you're citing. This means that you cannot be accused of plagiarism if you appropriately cite the work that you have used to inform your own work. But today we're going to be looking at how to format those in-text citations, so how we expect you to present those. And I'll also be going over our example mini-essay and editing those in-text citations appropriately. So, let's start with the first example. One appropriate way of citing someone's work is by embedding their name and the date of their study into the text. For example, by saying, according to Tajfel and Turner, 1986, we gain self-esteem from being a member of a high-status group. This puts their names directly into the prose of your work, directly into the flow of your work. However, you might prefer to write as though you aren't referencing their work. You might find this helps your writing to flow. In which case, of course, you still do have to cite their work, but you can put it in brackets, meaning that you don't expect that to be read out. So, for example, we gain self-esteem from being a member of a high-status group, and then in brackets you would put Tajfel and Turner in 1986. Notice the specific ways that I've formatted these two citations. So with our first citation outside of the brackets and within the flow of the text, you can see that I've written the word and then next to it I've put the date in parentheses. Also, always make sure, as before, that you use capital letters for names. But this in-text citation differs to this in-text citation. Here, both names are within the brackets, and instead of writing the word and, I have used this ampersand. This represents the word and, but we expect you to use this instead of the word and if you are writing a citation within within brackets. You would then also put a comma before you put the date and close the brackets. Now, this might sound really picky, but this is what we expect for in-text citations. Now, of course, the example that I gave had 2 authors for the citation. However, sometimes citations will have more than 1 or 2 authors. If a citation that you're using has 1 or 2 authors, then every time you write out that citation, no matter whether it's within brackets or as part of the text, you would write both of their names. But sometimes papers have many authors, and it would take a lot of space to write 5, 10, even 15 authors down every single time you were citing their work. So instead, if you have 3 to 5 authors, the first time you cite their work, so the first time within an essay that you cite their work, you write every single name that appears on that paper, so every single name that authored that paper. You put a comma between all of their names, and then before the last name you put that ampersand again, or you would write and if you're writing it within the text, followed by the date. However, if you have 3 to 5 authors in subsequent citations, so the next time you refer to that same paper within that same piece of work, instead of saying all of their names, you would say the name of the first author, followed by et al, meaning and all and the rest, followed by a full stop and a comma, and the date. This indicates that although you're only mentioning one name, there are multiple people who have contributed to that paper. Similarly, if you have 6 or more authors, you also use et al. After the first author's name. However, this happens from the very first time you cite this paper. So whereas with 3 to 5 authors, the first time you cite a paper, you cite all of their names followed by the first name et al. For subsequent citations. If there are 6 or more authors, then you would just put the name of the first author followed by et al. And the date. So let's see how our mini essay would look if we are applying the APA formatting guidelines to the essay. Well, first let's start with our font. So we need to change our font to be Times New Roman. And we need to change our font size to be 12. You can see it's already looking clearer. We'd want our title to be in bold, and we'd want our line spacing to be double line spacing. See? It's getting even easier to read. Finally, we indent every new paragraph. Can you see how now, even just doing those very brief, very easy edits, this essay looks much more easy to read. So let's move on to our in-text citations. Now, I included some in-text citations the last time I edited this. However, I did not appropriately format those in-text citations. So let's change our incorrectly formatted citations and make sure that they're appropriately formatted. So here we can see that we have Sheriff, who is the name of the author, but we do not have the date and we don't have it in brackets. So we will take this citation out and we will paste in from one that I did earlier from an essay that I wrote earlier, the appropriate citation. So here we can see that it's gone from being outside of brackets, no capital letter, no comma and no date, to looking far more professional. So let's go through and do that with the rest of the citations. Here we have a citation for Tajfel and Turner. So we will remove that there because we have no date and we have used the wrong ampersand. So I'll just delete that, and instead I'll paste in the appropriate, ignore that, I'll paste in the appropriate citation there, see? So now we have Social Identity Theory by Tajfel and Turner in 1986. Let's do that again for our next in-text citation. Banerjee and Greenwald. See here, I've forgotten to use a capital letter for Banerjee. I've also used and when that should be an ampersand because this should really be within brackets because it is not associated with the logical flow of this sentence. It's just sort of stuck on the end. So I'll remove this and I will replace it with a better formatted citation. There we go. Now you can see that what's missing is the brackets. So I will just put those brackets in there. And now we have another appropriately formatted in-text citation. The final in-text citation that I'll show you is this one by Stephen and Stephen. Now, again, I've forgotten to put in capital letters, although I have used the appropriate ampersand, but again, we're missing that date. So I will remove that citation and I'll replace it with the appropriate citation. Doesn't seem to want to let me do it. There we go. Now, even though Microsoft Word doesn't seem to like that, that is an appropriate way of writing our in-text citations. Although you can see here that I referred to social identity theory, but I've forgotten that citation entirely. So let's make sure that we just get that appropriate citation in there for social identity theory, because even though we have mentioned this before, even though we have mentioned Tajfel and Turner before, we're into a new paragraph now. So we want to make sure that people remember that Tajfel and Turner created the social identity theory. And then the rest of the citations from that point are all appropriately formatted. I hope this clarifies how to use appropriate in-text citations, and in our next session we will look a little deeper into how to format references.